Imagine a young person, no older than your own child or a younger sibling, sitting alone in a sterile room. They're facing adults in authority, asking intense questions. The air is thick with tension, and the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just a scene from a TV show. It's a real-life situation that plays out in interrogation rooms across the country every day. Today, we're going to explore a critically important and often misunderstood topic: why youth interrogations carry such significant risks. We'll delve into the unique psychological vulnerabilities of young people and understand why these encounters, designed to seek truth, can sometimes lead to devastating consequences, including false confessions. This isn't about casting blame, but about understanding a complex intersection of developmental psychology, legal process, and human vulnerability, an area that is actively being debated and reformed in our justice system. To truly grasp the gravity of youth interrogations, we first need to understand the developing mind. Think of the adolescent brain not as a miniature adult brain, but as a house that's still very much under construction. While the foundational walls might be up, the intricate wiring, the crucial finishing touches in the control room, particularly the prefrontal cortex, are far from complete. This part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for executive functions: judgment, impulse control, understanding long-term consequences, and resisting peer or authority pressure. It's the brain's CEO, making the big, rational decisions. But in teenagers and young adults, this CEO is still in training, often leading to impulsive choices and a tendency to prioritize immediate relief over future repercussions. This developmental immaturity is not a flaw, it's simply a stage of growth, but it makes young people inherently more susceptible to external influence and pressure, especially in a high-stress environment like an interrogation. This developmental difference isn't just theory, it has profound, measurable impacts. Research unequivocally shows that juveniles are disproportionately more likely to falsely confess than adults. We're talking about startling numbers. Some studies indicate false confession rates as high as 42% among juveniles in exoneration cases, compared to 13% for adults. That's 2 to 3 times more likely. Why? Because when faced with intense pressure, a young person might confess simply to escape the overwhelming stress of the interrogation, believing it's the fastest way out, without fully grasping the long-term, life-altering consequences. Now, let's talk about Miranda rights. We all know the iconic phrase, "You have the right to remain silent." But how well do young people truly understand these crucial protections? The language of Miranda warnings is legalistic and abstract. Research suggests that a 6th grade education is needed for even 75% comprehension, and a 9th grade education for full understanding. This places many adolescents at a significant disadvantage, leading to an astonishingly high rate of Miranda rights waivers, often around 90%, by young people who likely don't fully grasp what they're giving up. Imagine signing away your most fundamental legal protections without truly understanding them. Beyond comprehension, there's the issue of suggestibility and compliance. Young people are generally more eager to please authority figures, whether it's a teacher, a coach, or a police officer. In an interrogation, this inherent desire to comply can be amplified by fear and stress. They might agree with leading questions, change their story to match what they perceive the interrogator wants to hear, or even confess to something they didn't do, simply to make the difficult situation end.
This vulnerability is further exacerbated by certain interrogation techniques. Methods often designed for adults, like the Reid technique, can be particularly problematic for youth. These techniques might involve heightening anxiety, presenting false evidence, making threats, or even offering false promises. Imagine a young person being told by an authority figure that their friend has already implicated them, or that a forensic test proves their guilt, even if it's not true. For an immature brain, distinguishing fact from fiction under such pressure becomes incredibly difficult, pushing them towards a confession that might be entirely unreliable. And it's not just the words spoken. The interrogation environment itself plays a crucial role. Lengthy interrogations, stretching for hours, can be mentally exhausting for anyone, let alone a developing mind. The absence of a parent, or crucially, an attorney, leaves a young person without an advocate, a trusted voice to guide them through a confusing and terrifying process. Coercive physical settings, like being handcuffed or shackled, only heightened fear and helplessness, making a genuine and voluntary statement even less likely. This fear can induce trauma responses, and for youth already struggling with mental illness or cognitive delays, the vulnerability is exponentially higher. This isn't a new revelation. The unique vulnerabilities of youth have been increasingly acknowledged. The U.S. Supreme Court, in landmark decisions, has recognized the developmental differences between youth and adults, influencing how juveniles are treated in the justice system. Law enforcement agencies, defense attorneys, psychologists, and advocacy groups are all involved in a dynamic and evolving conversation about best practices and necessary reforms. Researchers like Thomas Grisso and Stephen Casson have dedicated their careers to understanding these vulnerabilities, providing the evidence that fuels the push for change from organizations like the Innocence Project and the Juvenile Law Center. This brings us to the core controversies and debates surrounding youth interrogations today. One of the most contentious issues is the legality and ethics of deceptive interrogation tactics. Should officers be allowed to lie about evidence to a child? Critics argue that these methods are not only unethical but incredibly coercive for youth, significantly increasing the risk of false confessions. Another major debate centers on whether an attorney or a trained legal advocate should be mandatory for all juvenile interrogations. While parents are often present, can they truly provide effective legal counsel and advocacy for their child in a high-stakes interrogation? And what about Miranda warnings themselves? Are they truly adequate for juveniles, given their documented comprehension difficulties? There's a strong call for age-appropriate, simplified warnings that young people can genuinely understand. Perhaps one of the most practical and pressing concerns is the need for specialized training for law enforcement officers. We ask officers to be skilled in countless areas, and understanding adolescent brain development, trauma-informed approaches, and developmentally appropriate interrogation techniques should be fundamental. It's about balancing public safety with the imperative to protect vulnerable youth from coerced confessions and wrongful convictions. So what does the future hold for youth interrogation practices? The outlook points towards continued efforts for reform. We are likely to see more protective laws enacted by state legislatures, potentially prohibiting deceptive tactics or requiring legal counsel for juveniles. There will be an increased focus on specialized training for law enforcement, ensuring officers are equipped with the knowledge and tools to interact with young people in a developmentally appropriate way.
The debates surrounding the mandatory presence of legal counsel and the adequacy of Miranda warnings for juveniles are expected to intensify, hopefully leading to widespread adoption of clearer, age-appropriate warnings. Advocacy organizations will continue to push for systemic changes, with some scholars even proposing a categorical ban on officer-initiated pretrial interrogation of unrepresented youth, highlighting the profound challenges we still face. Ultimately, understanding these risks is not just an academic exercise, it's a call to ensure that our justice system, designed to protect everyone, truly safeguards its most vulnerable members, giving every young person the fair chance they deserve.